Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the 2021 Songbook Academy. My name is Renee Laschiazza, and I am the Director of Programs here at the Great American Songbook Foundation. Founded by five-time Grammy nominee Michael Feinstein, the Songbook Foundation is a nonprofit organization with a mission to inspire and educate by celebrating the Great American Songbook. Hello everyone, and welcome to the 2021 Tonight, we're excited to bring you a special artist spotlight talkback as a part of this year's Songbook Academy Summer Music Intensive for high school singers. 1 second, we're just having a few audio difficulties. Let me get that figured out here real quick. Is everyone on mute? Tonight, we're excited to bring you a special artist spotlight talkback as a part of this year's Songbook Academy Summer Music Intensive for high school singers. Okay, now we're all good to go. I'm so excited to be with you here tonight. Tonight's Artist Spotlight and all of our public events this week are offered free for the public. These programs can continue only with donor support. So if you're interested in supporting these kinds of educational opportunities through the lens of the Great American Songbook, please consider giving a gift of any size by texting Songbook, all caps, one word, to 91999 or visiting thesongbook.org/donate. Before I introduce you to our fabulous featured artists tonight, I want to say a special thank you to our education and engagement sponsors, Libby and Randy Brown, our national program partner, the Ephraimson Family Fund, and of course, our Ella Fitzgerald Charitable Foundation mentor champions who make everything we do possible. Our featured artist this evening, Mandy Barnett, the original teen star of Always Patsy Cline, is an acclaimed vocalist, actress, and frequent Grand Ole Opry performer known for her interpretive skills and devotion to classic country, R&B, and songbook standards. Her latest album, Every Star Above, was recorded with a 60-piece orchestra and arranged by legendary jazz maestro Sammy Nestico. Frequently referred to as a torch singer in the grandest sense of the word, the Judy Garland of our time, and a song's best friend. We are so pleased to have Mandy with us tonight. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Mandy to introduce herself. Please help me welcome Mandy. Hi, Mandy. I think you're, yep, there you go.
Can you hear me?
We can.
I'm not the most tech savvy person in the world, so I'm just really thrilled to be here and hope you all are doing well. And thank you all for having me. I started singing when I was about 5 years old, and I'm from the South. I'm from a small town, Crossville, Tennessee. And my mother discovered at an early age that I could sing, so she started trying to find opportunities for me to sing, like churches, fair openings, anything that opened, basically. I would go and sing the national anthem and God Bless America, and they called me Little Kate Smith. So I did this whole circuit in Tennessee, in the smaller towns and the churches and political rallies and things like that. And then when I was 10 years old, I had an opportunity to win a contest at Dollywood. And so I worked in the theme park circuit for a couple of years. And it was a brand new theme park. It had been Silver Dollar City for years, and Dolly and some investors bought Dollywood, and it just changed everything in East Tennessee. So I performed there for a couple of years, and then ended up going to Nashville, where I was on a really popular radio show called the Ernest Tubb Midnight Jamboree, which was a show that started at midnight after the Grand Ole Opry. And I became a regular guest on that show and ended up getting a record deal when I was 12 with Universal Records. And I was signed by legendary producer, record mogul, Jimmy Bowen. And through the years, several years, about 6 years, I was with him at Universal, and then he ended up moving and running Capitol Records in Nashville, and I went to Capitol Records with him, and I was on the label there until I was around 18 years old. So shortly after high school, I moved to Nashville, and from that point, shortly after getting to Nashville, actually was dropped from the label. And so that was something that was just, it was a very interesting period of my life. I was so young and just trying to find my way. And here I'd had this record deal for many years and felt, okay, I'm moving to Nashville, so I'm going to get to start making records and have all my dreams come true, just to get dropped. But shortly after that, I auditioned for a brand new musical, which was to be housed at a really famous venue. It's like the Carnegie Hall of the South. It's called the Ryman Auditorium, and also known as the Mother Church of Country Music. Hank Williams performed there, Patsy Cline, just dignitaries, politicians, just all kinds of history at this place. But it had been closed down for 25 years. So they did a $10 million renovation, and we premiered Always Patsy Cline at the Ryman Auditorium. And from there, sold out night after night. We were housed there for 6 months. And then in 1995, we did it again. And from there, I have signed with record labels. My debut album, Mandy Barnett, came out on Asylum Records. And then my second album, I've Got a Right to Cry, was released on Sire Records, which is actually a New York label. I was doing traditional country with Seymour Stein, who's known as the godfather of punk. He signed Madonna, the Talking Heads, Depeche Mode, Katie Lang, Chris Isaak, folks like that. And he loved country music. And so he gave me this great opportunity to work with Owen Bradley. And Owen Bradley is like known as the architect of the Nashville sound. Started Music Row, just an incredible, and a pioneer. It was Patsy Cline's producer, Brenda Lee, Ernest Tubb, all the greats. And so I got to make his last recording with him back in 1999, and that was called I've Got a Right to Cry. So that started a lot of great opportunities. I toured all over, played the Tonight Show, the Late Show with David Letterman, was on CBS Sunday morning, played Madison Square Garden, just had some really, really great opportunities. I put out a Christmas record with Cracker Barrel back in 2010. Had just an incredible response to that. That was great. And then recently I recorded with a 60-piece orchestra. All the arrangements are written by the legendary jazz maestro Sammy Nestico. And that record's called Every Star Above. It just came out. So I am extremely proud of that record. It's my first Great American Songbook album, even though I'm known as a country singer, but I've been singing the Songbook standards since I was a little kid. But this was the first time that I could really do it in a legit way. And I'm just so very proud of it. Is that a good place to stop? Or
yes, no, that's perfect.
Because I try to give you the condensed version, but of kind of who I am and what I've done for a while anyway.
Well, so I have some questions for you, but first I would like to give our students the chance to ask some questions. You all just heard, about Mandy's career, and she's a great resource for you. So what questions do you have for Mandy, perhaps about anything she just told you? Questions, comments? Nathan, do you have a question?
Yeah. So I was just curious, of all the people you've met throughout your incredibly successful career, how many of them actually planned to go into music, and how many of them were like majoring in something else in college, or like were even just coming out of high school? Like, how many people did it just happen for unexpectedly?
How many, you mean how many people got into music unexpectedly?
Yeah.
Okay. Most of the people I know in music have always been performers, but there are a couple of people, like Charlie Pride, for instance, started out as a baseball player, and he wanted to be a professional baseball player, and then ended up becoming, an international country superstar. So, so I know that I know there are those stories. I don't personally know a lot of them, because, like me, I started out when I was just a kid, and a lot of the folks I know did that too.
Do you know? I think he's on the Pacers team, like Victor Oladipo. He has like a Spotify and he sings. So I kind
Oh
of want to
yeah.
do that. Yeah.
Well, I'm not surprised, because I think that, people love music and singing is fun, and I think it's perfectly fine to do something else and sing. For me, it's just, I started so young that I really have a hard time identifying with anything else, because I was singing when I was so little. I've just always been a singer.
Awesome. Okay, I saw Annie, and then Angeli, and then Lydia.
Hi. So I have a question about kind of just whether it's in music or like another career path. How do you kind of pick yourself up at bumps in the road and carry yourself forward and continue to kind of be a trailblazer? Like, what has worked for you?
Well, sometimes you just have to sometimes you just have to fall apart and pull yourself back up together. That's what I've done. I've definitely been disappointed through the many years that I've been in the music business, and there are bumps, and you just have to pick yourself up and dust yourself off and keep going. And as time goes on, you get tougher, but you have to be tough in this business, because you're putting yourself out there in a big way when you're putting albums out, or when you're in a lead in a play, and you're opening yourself up to be criticized. And it happens, but you just have to get over it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Angeli?
Hi.
Hello.
So I was wondering, you were mentioning releasing your album, and I think I saw in your bio that this is your 8th album. So I was wondering, as someone who's sort of new to creating music, how that process was like for you, and as someone as well who sort of constantly finds new things and is changing, like one piece can work on it forever, how you sort of finalize that and how that worked for you.
Yeah, I didn't talk about all 8. I kind of skipped around, because it's hard when you're talking about you try to hit the highlights, even though I'm barely scratching the surface. But to me, when you're making a record, it's really an exciting thing, because you're thinking of either a theme or some kind of, some kind of message that you want to convey. And it can be just a lot of fun researching the songs and finding, because it's kind of like putting a puzzle together. You find your first couple of songs that you're really excited about, and then everything else just kind of comes together. And that's how I've always done it. And making an album is just really one of my favorite things to do.
Lydia?
Hi. I had a question about the music industry, especially in Nashville, because my brother is currently going to school there for music, and my best friend is heading off there as well. So I was wondering if you have any tips on making connections and like finding people who will let you play at their venues, or I don't know, if you have any tips on making connections in the music industry, I'd love to hear them.
I just think getting out and about is, when you know that good people are playing or popular people are playing, I would just go out and network. You're young, and meet all the players, and maybe see if someone will let you get up and sing. When I first came to town, which was a totally different deal, there was a guy, he had platinum blonde hair and a black beard and wore a cowboy hat. And I asked him, I said, "Are you so-and-so?" And he said, "Well, it depends. Are you the IRS?" And I said, "No, I just want to get up and sing." So he would let me get up and sing every time I would show up at that club. So I started going to that club, and there were a lot of different people that frequented that place. And so I ended up meeting a lot of interesting people, and So that's really what it's all about. You just have to show up. It's like showing up for the Always Patsy Cline audition. That was a fluke. I had no idea the day before that I would be showing up for an audition to be in a musical that would, and it's not like I didn't move to Nashville to be in a musical, but I decided to show up, and it changed my life.
That's awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Amazing. Other questions? Questions from students? Looks like Piper has a question.
Were you really nervous when you released your first album?
Yeah, I was probably not as nervous if I hadn't, had the experiences from before. But I think it's always a little nerve-wracking when you're putting yourself out there and saying, here, this is something that I've been working on and I'm proud of it, whether you've written it or whether it's something that you're that you're really proud of. But at the same time, you have to put that aside and just go for it and believe in yourself.
Jack.
Hello. Am I
Hey.
unmuted? I definitely am. Okay. You mentioned that making an album is fun.
Mhm.
How does one go about doing that? I am kind of I play a couple instruments and I've gotten into producing on my own time, but I'm, terrible. And
Terrible at what?
producing.
At producing, yeah.
I play a couple instruments, but I'm horribly inexperienced with any digital audio workstation.
Yeah.
That's kind of
Yeah, that's a whole other animal, and it's tough because if you're good at something, good at playing, but you're not good at engineering.
yeah. And that's kind of, so I'm kind of reverse engineering my brain to teach myself how to do this. And I guess my question is just, and I assume networking is again a huge part of it, but
It would be good if you could find a friend that was good at engineering that could help you with that.
yeah.
And that would take some of the pressure off of you. Have you thought about taking any classes?
Yeah. It seems like, yeah, I don't know. I have thought about taking classes. I took 2 music production classes at like this like local like music like instruction place near my home. But I've just kind of been fumbling through on my own, which is fine and fun.
Right.
I was just curious if you had any input or experience or anecdotes or anything in that regard. And if you don't, that's like fine too.
Well, I mean, I have plenty of things to say about recording, but that specifically, it's like, I'm not going to fool with it. If I'm going to record at home, I'm probably going to call somebody that's going to work the computer for me because I'm not going to be able to do both well, so that's probably what I would do, is just find someone that's good at it and wanted to come over and help me out. So maybe there's an engineer out there that's looking for someone to record.
Cool.
And, someone your age, and you guys can figure out some stuff together. So
thank you.
You're welcome.
Vincent and then Natalie.
Hi, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the technical elements that go into putting together an album / like putting together a set list for a concert.
The technical elements, as far as like versus, like an album versus a show?
No, and in like sequencing of songs and what you look for and those kind of technical elements of how to put together a cohesive set list that perhaps you'd put on an album or sing
or doing a show. Yeah, just kind of go by what I feel. And a lot of times I won't stick with a set list. I change it most shows, but there are some times that I will do a set list and maybe have 3 or 4 songs that I usually do keep up front, just because they set a certain mood or create a vibe. And with shows, you can get away with doing a lot more things. You can get as far as like variety of music, where with an album, it needs to be a little more cohesive. So But as far as sequencing an album, I usually go by the song that just punches me in the gut as far as the first one, and then just go from there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Natalie and then Maggie.
Hi. So my question is about recording vocals in a studio versus singing live on stage. What are some like challenges or just differences that you found when you're recording an album versus just singing live, like the nuances of that I'm curious about?
So the differences between recording or performing live? Well,
Yeah.
one of the major differences is just having headphones. And a lot of people, they use in-ear monitors. I never have. Well, I have a couple of times. So I kind of like the wedges on stage. But some people prefer recording because it's all there in one room and you can just hear everything really well. I really like both. I like traveling. I love just seeing different audiences because every audience is different, feeling their energy. But then I also love recording. I love just the whole process from start to finish.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Go for it, Maggie.
Hi. I wanted to start by saying I can't tell if it's like a shirt or a jumpsuit, but I love like the green thing you're wearing. It's like
Thank
really...
you. It's actually a shirt.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I saw it, I was like, oh my gosh, it's so cool. But my question, I guess when I think of like this kind of songbook era music like jazz and all that and country, I don't see many similarities between the two genres like outright. And I was wondering, since you're like well versed in both, if you see like similarities that we might not initially recognize.
Well, the songs are a lot are about love and loss and about good times and bad times. So there's songs that have a general message that relate to a lot of people. So Rosemary Clooney recorded a Hank Williams song and had a very big hit, Half as Much. Tony Bennett recorded another Hank Williams song, Cold, Cold Heart. A lot of country music singers really are crooners. Patsy Cline was definitely a crooner. When you listen to really her catalog, it wasn't all country. A lot of it was kind of on the big band or pop side of things. And she even recorded an Irving Berlin song and Cole Porter. She recorded True Love and Always and Does Your Heart Beat for Me. So there's a lot of country singers that have kind of crossed into the songbook category. Dean Martin, Frank Sinatra, Sammy Davis Jr., those guys kind of dabbled in country. Ella Fitzgerald even recorded a country record one time. So there definitely are similarities and lots of artists that have dabbled in both genres.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you.
Anna Shea, I think, has a question, then maybe Piper.
Hi. I was wondering what the process is like when recording like a song or an album and how long it takes.
The process of recording a song?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you find your songs and then there's a lot of pre-production. And before you go in and spend a big budget on, because I'm telling you, there have been songs that I've loved that I thought, oh, this is going to be great. And then I sing it or do a demo and I'm like, oh man, this is so awkward. So instead of spend all the money on that track, I usually toss it. Because if it's just that awkward and I can't put my heart into it, it's still a great song, but it just, it's like going to the mall and finding some dress and it looks great. And then you put it on. It's like, oh my goodness, it's awful. So I try things out a lot of times just to see, just loosely with like an acoustic guitar. And then, so sorry, I lost my train of thought. What was the question again?
Just the process and how long it usually takes.
Oh, how long it usually takes. Okay, so you go into the studio And, a lot of times it just depends on the artist. I like to sing with the band. And so a lot of times we can get the majority of the vocal with just singing with the band, because there is a lot of energy that comes with standing there with those musicians. You're really playing off of each other, and some magic can happen. Some people prefer to record the tracks and they're not even there, and they may go like 6 weeks later and do their vocals. But for me, I like to stand there with the band and try to get as much of it as possible.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Piper, did you have a question?
Yes, I did. You talked about having a theme for your albums, and I was wondering if you chose the theme of your album beforehand, or is it something that you kind of piece together with songs that you already have?
Well, Every Star Above is actually from the song You've Changed, which is on the album. And me and a friend of mine brainstormed about the title. The title's really important. The title and the cover of the album, it's the first thing that people see. And it's just really, if you have if you're going to record something, you need to spend money and time on the name and the graphics and the photography, because it is so important. It doesn't really matter how great the music is if you don't have that image that's really powerful.
Awesome. Other questions? I think our program coordinator, Chelsea, has a question.
Okay.
Hey, I have a quick question about your work with Always Patsy Cline. So,
Okay.
How did you go about emulating Patsy's voice? And then was it hard to get back to your own voice? Because something that a lot of the finalists are working on this year or this summer is listening to different artists, but then also using their own voice. So any tips for that, emulating a singer, but also not losing yourself in that?
It's really hard. I mean, it really is. But I listened to Patsy Cline so much when I was a little kid that basically her music was like ingrained in my head. I knew every single lyric. I loved her voice. And so I think because I was an alto, it was very easy for me to kind of slip into that. I was also Southern, and exposed to different types of music, like gospel music, R&B, country, pop. So Patsy Cline was a natural person for me I loved her music. And when I started doing Always Patsy Cline, for the first couple of runs, I definitely tried to emulate her, but I did find that night after night, because there's 27 songs, it really did a number on my voice. Because it was just, her songs were all they had big endings and vocally challenging. And so anyway, so that was definitely a process. But I think over the years, just doing different music, pushing myself to do different genres and things like that, you hear the influence, but it's kind of morphed into her and all my favorites: Connie Francis, Linda Ronstadt, Judy Garland, Ella. I think you can just become sort of a melting pot of all your influences. Learn from all of them, even and the guys too, Nat King Cole, Frank. I mean, I love them all.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Other questions from students? You're Mandy pros, aren't you? I have a question for you.
Lily has a question.
Great.
Sorry.
That's even better. Go for it, Lily.
So I don't know, do you write your own music as well, or do you mostly sing covers, or both?
I don't write my own music. I've always been a standard singer, and I've always just loved the songs basically from the 30s through the 80s, just the standards. And, you know, I dabble in writing. It's just not my passion.
Yeah.
Other questions from students? I'll wait this time. Okay, well, while we wait for someone to ask the question, has there been one particular artistic experience that has been particularly fulfilling for you over anything else? And what made that so fulfilling for you?
Well, you know, I have to say this last experience working with Sammy Nestico, it's just the highlight of my life. He was such a sweetheart, such a talent. He started out with the Tommy Dorsey Orchestra, and he was 95 years old and wrote all the arrangements to the new record, and which are all the songs from Lady in Satin, the Billie Holiday album. And I'm just so thrilled that that opportunity came along. Fred Mullen, he runs Melody Place, that's the label that released the record. He knew Sammy Nestico, had worked with him in the past. He asked me to go to lunch one day to discuss concept albums. That's what the boutique record company is. It's all concept albums. And so he said, "What would you think about doing all of the songs from Lady in Satin with Sammy Nestico?" Wow, if you can get Sammy Nestico, that would just be unbelievable. So by the end of the day, he had already spoken to him. Sammy's 95, and he said, "Why did you have to call me now?" He said, "I'm so old." And he said, "Well, I'll tell you what," he said, "let me try 2. So we wrote 2, and then next thing you know, he'd written 4, and then 6, and he finished the entire album. And it was just, I was just astounded when I heard the arrangements, because he sent them mocked up with like some sort of a synth playing all of the different instruments and guidance for the vocal. And it's just really, really something. And to record at Ocean Way here in Nashville. Sammy wasn't able to travel because his health wouldn't allow him to travel, but he was on Zoom, and we brought the iPad into the room with all the musicians. And it was like 60 pieces, and they all gave him a standing ovation, and he was just so overwhelmed. But just an incredible arranger. Worked with Count Basie and Frank Sinatra, and just so many of the greats.
I can see how that would be fulfilling.
Yeah, really was.
Vincent, looks like Vincent has a question.
Okay.
As a experienced singer and performer, I was wondering if you had any like pitfalls to watch out for younger performers, or just advice in general.
Pitfalls, as far as what? As far as any particular direction?
Perhaps like approaching a song or directly in performance.
You know, I think just be honest. Put your heart in it. You know, I think, you know, you can always be prepared. You can always practice, but I think just letting yourself be vulnerable and real, and putting your heart into your performance. That's really, really important.
Other questions? Jason.
Hi, I know that this seems like a sort of redundant question when you're talking about some of the great songs or songs that belong to the Great Songbook, but if you are singing a song that has already been written and performed, and you have a very different style than what it was originally intended, how much of your style do you bring, and how much of that original style do you still tip your hat to? Are you ever afraid that you're too far off or too close?
I think it depends. If it sounds good, that's really what matters. I mean, I think you shouldn't take a song and just, I mean, you could turn it into a bossa nova if it sounds like, wow, that's great. But if it makes it sound really weird, then I think you just have to go by what works, you know? And some songs are just like that. If you take them in too different of a direction, it just loses something. So that's usually kind of, I mean, I have taken songs different directions before, and luckily it's worked, but I think you just have to just kind of go by how it feels. And if it feels awkward, don't do it.
Mandy, all of these students are in high school, and some of them are looking at pursuing a career in music. Okay. So what would you have told yourself when you were their age, after your experience now, to prepare them for entering the music industry?
Okay. Well, it's a business. And so it's not just moving to New York or moving to Nashville or whatever and everything just going swimmingly. You have to learn how to roll with the punches. First of all, you got to make yourself available and go and show up and audition and do all those sorts of things. But you do have to realize that it's a business, and it's a difficult business. There are peaks and valleys, and it's very important that you don't let it get you down, because you can be rejected. You can have some really, really tough times. Sometimes it's hard to make a living being a musician or being an artist. So you have to take that into account, and hopefully it will be easier than that, but those things can happen.
Other questions? Awesome. Well, Mandy will be working with several of you tomorrow. So I think we can go ahead and wrap up if there's no more questions. But okay. Mandy, if you have any final remarks that you would like to make to these kiddos, I'll give you the floor.
Okay. I'm just big about basically showing up for opportunities. If you see that there is an opportunity to audition for something, go for it. Like the young lady was asking earlier about networking, make those connections, see if you can get up with that band, and because you just never know what is going to lead to an opportunity. And a lot of times it's never what you think it's going to be. You just have to roll with the punches and walk through the doors that open for you. And that's kind of how I've always lived my life. I mean, I've had so many weird opportunities. I mean, I'm on a couple of SpongeBob albums, just, singing with SpongeBob and Sandy the Squirrel and doing bit parts and things like that. And you just never in a million years think, yeah, I'm going to be doing SpongeBob's Christmas record or The Best Day Ever. We did that album. I'm all over that one. So you just have to keep an open mind. I wouldn't be like, oh, I would never do that, or I would never want to work with that person. I would never do that, because you just never know. You just never know. It might be your ticket.
I just want to give the floor one more time in case there's anyone who wants to follow up on SpongeBob. Any other questions before we wrap up? Nathan has one.
Yeah, so you mentioned like the SpongeBob stuff, and I have to ask, did you ever meet Clancy Brown or no?
No, I didn't. Just Tom Kenny, who's SpongeBob. But I didn't meet any of the other characters, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you.
Sorry about that.
I like him a lot, but it's okay.
Right. Yeah, it's a great cartoon.
Well, thank you so much, Mandy, for being here. And I know everyone's excited to work with you tomorrow. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening, and we hope that you'll tune in tomorrow for our final Songbook Academy Day. And don't forget to register for our virtual showcases featuring performances from all 40 of these talented singers, Michael Feinstein and more, streaming August 6th through the 8th. So you can register for that at thesongbook.org. Again, if you enjoyed today's Talkback and would consider supporting us, please visit thesongbook.org/donate or text Songbook, all one word, all caps, to 91999. Thanks again, and we will see you all tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mandy.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.